Right, for our book of the day today is Who Brought the Bread? And you all know the story of the loaves and the fishes, where Jesus feeds the 5,000. And this story kind of takes place with that. Now that story where Jesus feeds 5,000 is in the Bible. That's a true story. This is a made-up story based on the true story in the Bible. So who brought the bread? A Bible mystery. Hulda's chores were done for the day, the washing, the sewing, the cleaning up. And now she was determined to go to the hillside and see what all this fuss was about. Jesus this, Jesus that. It was all she'd heard for days. Now she could see for herself. Hulda huffed and hurried her way up the hill. It was getting late, and the higher she climbed, the lower the sun dropped behind her, dropped its orange light into the lake, and stretched her wide shadow thin and tall. Then Hulda saw the crowd gathered in groups like bunches of grapes. Then Hulda heard the crowd, noisy and loud, like a storm at sea. Then Hulda sniffed and, oh, what a smell she smelled! The air was thick with the crusty perfume of the fresh-baked bread. And from that moment she could think of nothing else. Her head was filled with one question and one question only. Who brought the bread? Hulda knew a thing or two about bread, you see. For 3 years running, she had been voted Bethesda's best baker, and bread, barley bread, was her specialty. Picking the grain, grinding it to flour, sorting the measures, mixing in the water, kneading in the leaven, leaving it to rise, and then baking it with, well, that was Hulda's secret. Hulda, over here, called Joanna, Hulda's neighbor. Come join us, Joanna said. What are you doing? Asked Hulda. What does it look like we're doing? Laughed Joanna. We're eating bread and fish. And may I say, added Joanna's sister Susanna, that this is the best bread and fish I have ever tasted. Hulda marched over to Joanna and grabbed a chunk of bread out of her friend's hand. The best bread? She huffed. Impossible. Hulda broke the bread in half. She held it right under her nose and breathed in deeply. The more Hulda chewed, the more she worried, but she was determined not to let it show. She sniffed barley bread. Not bad. Almost as good as mine. Almost, said Susanna. Not almost, better. She tore a thumb-sized piece off one end and popped it into her mouth, and slowly and carefully she chewed. That was too much for Hulda. All right, she shouted. Then tell me, where did you get it? Who brought the bread? We don't know, said Joanna. After Jesus finished teaching, his disciples sorted us into these groups. Then a little while later, they passed around the food. But I don't know who brought the bread. You'll have to ask one of them. Hulda stomped off. Sarah the seamstress waved at her. Aaron the butcher waved too. Her cousin Elizabeth called hello. But Hulda ignored them all. She had something more important to do. Finally, she spotted one of Jesus' disciples with a huge basket of bread and fish under his arm. Hulda grabbed his shoulder and spun him around. I'm sorry, he said. Did I miss you? Or would you like some more? Hulda actually was pretty hungry by now, and the bread smelled more wonderful than ever. But she was determined to get an answer. Who brought the bread? Hulda snapped. Oh, I'm sorry, said the disciple, but I don't know. The master split it up and gave it to us to pass out. I didn't see where he got it. I suppose you'll have to ask him. The disciple pointed his finger across the crowd. So Hulda marched off to find Jesus. She didn't bother stepping around the groups this time. She plowed straight through them like a runaway boulder. Hulda, called a friend. Have you tasted the bread? Hulda, shouted a neighbor. It looks like you've got competition. Hulda, hollered her very own mother. You have got to get this recipe. Hulda looked at the bread in her hand. The doughy smell hung in the air. The crusty taste clung to her mouth. This bread is delicious, she finally admitted to herself. But who could have brought it? And so much of it. How could anybody bake so many loaves? Finally, Hulda marched up to Jesus. His back was turned to her, and he was talking with the crowd. So she tapped him on the shoulder with one stubby finger. Just one question, she interrupted. Who brought the bread? Jesus turned and smiled, but before he could answer, someone giggled. Someone in the crowd, someone right behind him. Hi, Ma, giggled that someone again. It was Nathan, Hulda's youngest son. Nathan, asked Hulda, what's so funny? And what are you doing here anyway? You should be with the rest of the family. Well, I was, said Nathan. But then it got late, and everybody got hungry, and one of Jesus' friends That man over there came asking if anybody had any food to share. I had that picnic lunch you packed me, remember? Those 5 loaves and 2 fish? So I told the man Jesus could have them. And Jesus took the fish and the bread and broke it up, and somehow there was enough for everyone. And that's why I was laughing when you asked who brought the bread. It looks like you did, Ma. Well, you and Jesus. Huldah's face turned oven red. She felt very foolish and just a little confused. But how? She said. How did he make so much? I don't know, Ma, said Nathan. Maybe Jesus has a secret recipe too. Then someone from the crowd called out one more time, Great bread, Jesus, best I ever tasted. And the woman who brought the bread looked at Jesus and smiled, a smile warm and shiny as a fresh baked bun. The end.